Now, Gene, you you're with
Anders.
right. You're the new big cheese, right?
I
So we
don't know about that.
just so you know, Lewis, we're recording right now and we're live
Okay.
streaming.
Okay. All right. Congratulations, Gene.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Tell Tom I said hello when you talk to him.
I will. I will.
Do you want me to do roll call, Lewis?
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. We're gonna officially. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna call the meeting to order, and I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask Mr. Clark to do roll call.
Okay. Angela Banks. Christina Bennett.
Present.
Joe Clark. Darnetta Clinkscale.
Yes.
Lewis Cross.
Present.
Sheila Goodwin.
Present.
Donna Jones.
Present.
Yvette Levy. Bobby Richardson.
Here.
Albert Sanders.
Present.
And Justin Stein.
Here.
And you have 8. So you have a quorum.
Okay. All right. We have a quorum. Okay. So we're gonna move on to the approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
And a motion can include just, all the dates would be okay.
Okay, so then we're gonna ask to include all the dates. That would be February 24th, April the 28th, and May the 5th. Now, do we have to do those individually, or we can do them all at once?
You can do them, just a motion to approve the minutes and just list the dates.
I make
Okay.
a motion. I make a
I'd
motion.
like to make go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Board of Trustee regular meeting minutes from February 24th, 2020, April 28th, 2020, and May 5th, 2020.
I second.
Bobby, I heard Bobby.
Okay, it's been, motion has been made and properly moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. Okay, so now we'll move on to the reading of communications to the Board of Trustees. Do we have any, Mr. Clark?
We do not.
Okay, then we'll move on to presentation by interested parties.
And
Anybody?
we don't have any, but I wanted to point out that the attorney had me correct the general meeting notice, not the board meeting notice, but the one that is posted to give an alternative to folks who wanted to submit some comments, and there were none. So there's an email set up now for that, but no one sent in any comments or presentation or anything.
Okay, all right. Consent agenda, approval of retirement and benefits March through June 2020. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the retirement applications for 2020. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one, approval of refunds and bills, February through May 2020.
I make a motion to approve the refunds and bills for February through May 2020.
Second.
Okay, it's been, motion has been made and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, so we'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any, Mr. Clark?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Anybody have any? Okay, we'll move on. Report of the chairperson. Okay, report of the chairperson.
That would be you.
Yeah, I know. I'm, no report at this time.
Okay.
Report from the executive director.
I have, well, first of all, I wanted to, before we get into the audit, I wanted to just kind of give an update on this COVID stuff, especially from an administrative perspective. And for those of you who don't get the newsletter sent to you through the mass mailing, it is available on our website. And there's just an update on there about our office being open, but until further notice, that the office is closed to the public for the safety of those we serve. And then there's a list of us retired members. We have a large population, not a large population, we have a significant number of people that have underlying health conditions. Then we have our trustees and we have our staff and the general public. So it's in the best interest not to open the office right now to the public. And that also states that we're having the trustees are conducting their meetings through Zoom. So I just wanted to make sure that, and that's on our website. It's on our doors.
Okay.
Also, if anybody asks you about how to deliver things to us, we were asking through regular mail, to be sent through regular mail, or to email a staff member if you know them. Of course, the telephone. And if anybody has retirement documents that need to be delivered pronto, we have installed a drop box down by the front door for last minute items. And that is actually on our website as well.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, on a regular basis, there are 4 of us here right now in the office. Three on a rotating basis are working remotely. We feel a 4 person number in the office is, you know, promotes good social distancing. We all have our own offices. We stay, if anybody congregates in a general area, we're 6 feet apart. And we try not to do that. And we're wiping down tops and, you know, tabletops and all that on a daily basis as well.
I have a question. Are you done, Andy?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, have you had a professional company come in and sanitize the entire facility? And secondly, are the employees wearing masks? And third, I guess this would be a question I pose to Matt, the legal liabilities associated with the fact that if someone gets the COVID that's working there, one of our employees, are we liable, Matt?
In terms of whether you're liable or not, that'd probably just be more of a work comp issue, determine whether that person would be eligible for workers' compensation. There may be, it would basically depend on whether they had the proof causation that they received it from work or from a condition at work rather than just something in the general public. So they would have to prove causation to that effect.
Louis, and in an answer to your question about masks, right now, if we're social distance enough so we don't wear masks when we're in our own offices, but if we're out and about, people are wearing masks.
Is that everybody in the office?
Well, yes, for the most part, everybody. However, we're not really interacting in person very much. So we're really, and you know, we're 6 feet or more apart, and that's where it's when you're within that 6 feet on a regular basis. And we don't cram into rooms. We don't do any of that. We are spread out. It's a pretty big office, as you know, and we're all confined pretty much to our own workspace. Very little interaction with each other.
And lastly, about the sanitizing of the facility.
We have not had a service come in to do that, no.
Okay.
Can you hear me? My screen went blank.
Yes. We can hear you.
I
Dawn.
wanted to follow up. I don't know what happened here. It's blank, but I wanted to follow up on the question where we talked about causation. I'd like to hear more of that. Maybe at a later time, as far as employees who might contact COVID. How is that different from anything else that would happen in the workplace as far as the insurance is concerned?
I don't have a straight off answer. It probably isn't. You know, other than what Matt said with workers' compensation, we provide really good medical insurance, and it would be really, I think it would be hard to prove where someone picks this up.
Right.
You know, that's the, I really think that if we're out in public, we're taking our own, you know, our own risk. If we have 2 employees that are very, very nervous about coming in, they work remotely pretty much all the time. They will come in, and I allow that. You know, in this time, I am not enforcing, you know, this, you have to be in the office thing, because if someone's really scared, you know, how can I, as their supervisor, mandate that? I just, with a clear conscience, and, you know, and I know 2 that are, and, you know, one person at home, they have a pre-existing condition with a spouse, and they don't even go to the grocery store. You know, they have everything delivered. So because of that, and it's I'm not going to go into what the pre-existing condition is, but it is one that's on the list, and it was a recent recovery as well.
Well, I guess I'm just concerned that how is this different from the flu or any other thing that an employee comes down with that, you know, is covered. So I guess I want to hear more. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't like that answer of the proof is on them. So.
Yeah, and it would be within any kind of insurance of
Right.
where you picked it up. I mean, when it comes down to, if it were to come down to a court issue, you know, for one thing, everybody's got really good health insurance here that we pay for.
Right.
However, you know, taking it home, I mean, I'm not even, you know, a good place are in the healthcare facilities. You know, I don't even know how they're handling that liability issue, other than they're separating and they're not going home. You know, we don't have a case here.
So how do I get the answer for that? Matthew, would you then research it, or would I?
Well, I can look into the issue and I can update the board.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
I'd appreciate that.
The scope of liability that the board may have as to the employees of the retirement system.
Okay.
And look into that.
could report it at the next one.
Okay, and I guess the other
Okay.
concern I had is that if the employees are wiping things down and we have a janitorial service and we haven't had a professional service come in to do the general sanitizing of the office, will that make them more liable because they're utilizing certain chemicals and things of that nature? And I thought that would be done by our custodial firm instead of our staff. But you're saying that the staff is wiping things down?
Not just we do. Our custodial firm is wiping everything down, but throughout the day, we wipe our own spaces down.
I
And
see.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Any other
Okay.
questions on it? I'm not done with my report list. I got to introduce the.
Oh no, I'm still listening.
Okay. So that's, if anybody doesn't have any more questions on the COVID, but I did want to provide an update because we hadn't talked about it. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our auditors. We have Jeannie D has replaced Tom Helm. So she's here, and then Brenda Shepard, who is our account manager and oversees all the auditors when they're here, gets the report together. We have a lot of interaction. They're here to present the audited financial statements as of the end of the year. I do have the document. Do you want me to put that up on the screen?
Sure.
Yeah, if you can, that'd be great.
Okay.
There
So
we
there
go.
it is. That's the front page. So I'll turn it over to you at this point. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everyone. I'll start. I'll be very brief. Really, I appreciate the compliment, Mr. Cross, but and I should say that I'm sure Tom Helm would want me to give his best regards to all of you. He's enjoying his retirement. We appreciate the opportunity to continue working with the public schools retirement system. My name is Jeannie D. I took over this year as the partner on the engagement. As you know, Brenda Shepard's been working on the engagement for a long time and is probably your key point of contact. I was delighted to have a part in helping out. We did start this audit right at the beginning. Well, actually, I should tell you, we started at we do a lot of planning and a lot of preliminary work in any audit that we do, certainly one of this size. And then our field work was right about the time all the shutdowns started. So fortunately, our team was pretty well equipped to move to remote working. And your team, your management team, and Andrew and Terry were very good about helping us get electronic copies of documents and files. So we were able to complete the audit timely, and we really didn't miss a beat. It's not the way I like doing things, but it is what it is, and we were able to get through the work. I'm going to take you through the audit report briefly, and then Brenda's going to take you through a couple of highlights on the financial statements themselves. So Andrew, if you'd go down to the page that has our letterhead, I think it's 3 or 4 pages in. It's
Yep.
after the table of contents.
There it is.
Right. Okay. And anytime we provide an audit for any company or any business or any entity, we have an obligation to explain to you that, the financial statements, everything that appears, all the footnotes, disclosures, the schedules, that's really the representation of the system to its external constituents. And so it's the responsibility of basically the management of the organization and ultimately this board of directors for all of the data, all of the information. Our responsibility as your auditors is to perform our tests and our procedures so that we can develop an opinion about whether or not those financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the accounting rules in the United States. So that's the who's on first and the what's on second of the auditor-auditee relationship. So the report has not changed from prior years. We use a prescribed language here, but we basically stated that they're your financial statements and the system's management is responsible for them. Our responsibility as your auditors is to do our tests and procedures accordingly. And so the next page, Andrew, will state our opinion that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the fiduciary net position of the system as of December 31st of 2019. This is called a clean audit opinion or an unmodified opinion, and that means 2 things. It means, number 1, there were no deviations or material deviations from generally accepted accounting principles. And number 2, we had no problems with the scope of our audit procedures. Even in the current environment where we're doing a lot of things electronically and virtually, we were still able to get all of the audit evidence and all of the testing done that we needed to do to be able to provide this opinion. So that's the highest type of opinion that you can receive from your CPA firm. And so congratulations to all of you and the management for another successful audit opinion. The rest of the report has to do with some required supplementary information and how it is arranged and the work that we do on that in relation to the basic financial statements and what level of responsibility you assign to that. So again, no changes from prior years on the way that we perform the audit or the way the opinion reads. In a couple of years from now, we're going to move some of these paragraphs around and change some language because our professional standards are being modified a little bit. But we signed the audit report this year on April 27th. And unless anyone has any questions on the actual opinion or report, I'll turn it over to Brenda to talk about the statements themselves.
Before Brenda starts, I'd like to point out that in the board packet, everybody was provided with a copy of the financial statements. So, and I'll let Brenda explain the 2 pages that we're going to look at here, but there's a lot of backup information to those. And I'll let Brenda talk about that.
I do. Trustee Jones had a concern, and I do as well. And I don't know if it's reflected in the audit, but we had a situation where someone was had not been reported as being deceased and had continued to be paid. Does that reflect in your audit?
I can let Brenda speak to that a little bit more. It's not
Okay, so
material
Brenda-
enough to land in the audit report, but we were aware of that, and so I'll let Brenda talk about how we
Okay.
deal with that.
Because we're going to
That's a-
follow up on it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. That's exactly right. We know about it. We, talked to Andrew and all about it. So we're aware and we know what the amount is, and it's just not material enough to put a specific line or a specific amount in the report, but we are definitely aware of the situation.
And another thing about that, Brenda, on the other, we'll look at it in a minute, but on the other receivables, that
We do.
Yeah, and we're going to show that in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that trustees realize that there's actually a contract in place with this person to pay back, and that was not executed, I believe, until January. So that is not going to be in this audit report, but we have another one that we're collecting on that is reflected here, and that's where it will be.
Okay, I guess, and I'll wait for Brenda, but I guess our Donna and our concern is that, is this the only one, or are there other situations where we haven't been able to catch someone who has passed on and we're still paying them? We want to make sure that that's just one situation. Andrew reported that it's one, but we want to make sure it's just one.
Well, if someone's I'll just speak to that. If someone's going to deceive us, they're going to deceive us. And clearly the one that we're working on now that's set up within that person did that, as far as we are concerned, intentionally.
Okay.
What we do is, Louis, before every payroll, we run the entire database against a national database. And we also, and that goes through Social Security. And there are only a handful of states that actually participate in that. A lot of them have protections where you can't go in and run your database against theirs. But Social Security is a very good source, and we have a lot of success with that. Where they, we almost every month we'll catch 2 or 3 that we don't know about. And
Andrew, can I bring something up? This is Troy. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, and then we also research the newspapers still, through the website, and we have someone who does that on a daily basis.
Okay.
So I feel comfortable with saying that if we have 1 or 2 that are still out there being paid, that's about it. And we've really ramped up our collection process over the past 5-6 years and have had a lot of success. And that's how this person was caught, actually, was through the Berwyn. So what the contracting company is.
Was that someone who wanted to speak?
Yeah, this is Troy.
Yeah, this is Troy. I was going to bring something up. This is kind of a common thing that I've seen in a lot of my plans, Louis, and I've actually seen one where a daughter of a member was receiving a benefit for like 8 years. But as Andrew mentioned, it's deceitful, and it comes back and everything is figured out. But to the other point that Andrew made about looking these things up, we actually have it's called a SWAT team based out of the St. Louis office, actually, that do these things, address searches and death searches. And I've actually done a few for a few plans this year. It really is, the cost is not that much. But it basically could take all of your retirees, but then also your inactives, whether they're deferred vested or your inactive members that are only due an account balance, and run a death search on them to find out if they are deceased or not, and then go from there on what to do. But the other thing,
Troy,
if we have the information.
Excuse me, Troy. why don't you talk about that in your report? We're trying to get through the audit here at this point.
Well, I'm just, yeah, I mean, bring up the questions about this. I mean, it's a possibility of saving a chunk of liability.
Okay. All right, well, then we'll come back to you, Troy. We'll go on with the audit report, but I know Donna was concerned, I'm concerned, and several of the trustees are, to make sure that we have a service that does that, and how effective is the service. We want to report on that. So go ahead.
Okay. And I might say too, that as part of our audit, we do test a few controls around things like that. So we're aware of what they are doing, as Andrew said, you know, checking the Social Security numbers and that type of thing. So there are, you know, some controls in place that are catching most of those. There are going to be a few that get through. Maybe there's something that Troy can help with. Whatever you can do to eliminate that risk, you know, is great. So getting on with the financials then. The next section of your financials is the management discussion and analysis. And this is something that Andrew prepares for us to put in with our report. It's basically a summary of the highlights of the year and what the results were, what they meant, what the differences meant. This is really good information that if you want to see, you know, read about. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but it kind of gives you an idea of what the returns were, what the differences in the net position were, what it caused the differences, things like that. I'll go through a few of those as I go through the statements, but these next few pages, like page 3, I think through probably 7, maybe, Andrew. Does that sound right?
It looks like, yes, 7, 8, actually.
The 8, okay. There's quite a few pages of those, but you know, in your copies, you'll see those. And I would say that's a good way to get a feel for what the differences are in the statements and things between the prior 2 years. Moving on to page 9, then, this is the statement of fiduciary net position, which means as of December 31st, 2019 and 2018, this is what the system had on hand. What the cash balance was, what the receivables were, what the investments market value was, all of that as of December 31st, 2019 and 18. The next day, it could have changed, but as of 2019, 12/31, this is where it stood. So we can see at the bottom of the page, your net position increased by about $73,000. And we can also see that the total assets increased by about that same amount because the liabilities stayed pretty close to the same. Now, we all know that the market was in pretty good shape at the end of 19, and that does have a tendency to reflect in these statements quite a bit. So we can move on to the next page, please.
Okay.
This page is the changes in fiduciary net position. So this is what caused those changes in the assets and the liabilities. First off, your additions consist of employer contributions, plan member contributions, and those totaled 60 million this year and 63 million last year. So that's a decline of 3 million. We know part of that is because of the switch from the actuary method to the statutory method of contributions for the employers. So we kind of expected that, and that may be going down, kind of evening out between the employee and the employers. The next item is the investment income and loss, and it goes back, there you go. Goes back to the type of investments. It shows what the investment income or loss was for those individual types of investments. And we can see that the net investment income was 126 million for this year, as opposed to $42 million loss last year. So we can say that the market value of the assets went up, A lot of this is a market change. Some of this income is dividends, interest, things like that. So, but we know that with the market change, the investment income was 126 million, which is really a nice turnaround. The other items are just rental income and miscellaneous income, and those vary to, rental income stays about the same. Miscellaneous income depends on things that we get from the investments, such as free receipts, things like that.
Okay.
Deductions stayed about the same. Operating expenses, contributions, refunds, benefits paid, all of that stayed about the same. So we're back down to our net increase of about $73 million, which was a good year. We know that, first part of 2020 is going to reverse that a little bit, but we always have room to get it back before the end of the year too. So, but at the end of 12/31/19, it was a nice turn.
So Brenda, this is Christine. I have a question.
Yes, Christine.
Why did we have a huge jump in or a huge decline in sick leave conversion?
Sick leave conversion was, let me find that.
I can speak to that.
Would you?
Yeah.
The
Sick leave conversion, there are only a handful left. We were almost completely paid out on that. And it's declining by leaps and bounds. I think Angie's really aware of that. We only have about 4 people left over at SLPS that are still eligible who haven't retired or claimed it yet.
Okay.
So that's why. And I mean, they're dropping off every year by 10 or 12 payees, and we're really down to just a handful. I think we only have 12 left on payroll right now.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions on those 2 pages of the numbers?
Not on those 2 pages.
Okay. The rest of the statements.
I do.
Yes,
Step
go.
back, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm looking at the screen and then I'm not looking at my notes. So
I understand.
There is a huge jump in other miscellaneous income of $1 million.
Right.
Or shy of $1 million under.
Yes.
What is that attributed to?
That's
a huge amount.
Right. That comes from different types of miscellaneous receipts from investments that have been written off in prior years or gone away in prior years. Another distribution comes through to settle it or something. They're like settlements. They're called free receipt income on the statements. There's a variety of different things that can go into that. So it varies depending on what's coming through in that year.
So it's not asset, like, so if it's a certain asset class, it doesn't go into the.
Right, exactly.
You just throw it into miscellaneous?
Right. It's a investment that we don't maybe have on the books anymore because it was dissolved or we got out of it or whatever, but something came in later, in a later year for it. Those type of things.
Would this be private equity or is this something like when we are winding down?
These are I would say recouped losses.
Exactly.
From the past.
Recouped losses. Some of it is from the partnership. Some of it's from the equity. Some of it's, there's various little
also
things.
The settlements, the legal settlements that we get.
Right. That's a lot. That's a part of it too. There's no way to really judge what this number is going to be in a year because they're just random. They just kind of come.
When you say legal settlements, is that coming from our custodian?
Yes. Our custodian works those for us.
Right.
On a regular basis. Yep.
Okay.
They do. They have a whole department that does that.
Yeah,
and they've ramped it up. They have really ramped that up. And I think what we're seeing too, believe it or not, are some lawsuits that took a long time to settle out.
So you're looking at like, these are those class action lawsuits that go on over time and they're just, it's not something that we invested in per se as an asset class. It's something that was a class action suit to a certain manager or provider and the custodian comes back and recoups some of these.
Yes, that's
for us
exactly
At
right.
a later date.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. Good. All right. Any other questions, Christina or anybody?
No.
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. The rest of the statements, as we page through are just our footnotes that explain a little bit more in detail about the general system. And most of these are required by the GASB. So I'm not going to bore you with any of those. You are welcome to look through them. And if you have any questions on those at any time, feel free to reach out to myself or Jeannie or anybody on our team. And we'll be happy to explain those more in detail, but they're just, it's just a lot of words in those. So
And they're pretty standard from year to year.
they are very
Correct.
standard from year to year. There's nothing that has changed this year. We just, follow what is required and put what we have to in there. So I don't see anything that jumped out at me that needed a further explanation. But like I said, if you see anything, please let us know.
Brenda, can you define what inactive members means? We have active members for teachers, right? Then we have retired members, but you have inactive members.
Yep.
What does that mean?
I can tell you. Let me talk to
Andrew?
that. Our inactive members are members who are no longer working, yet they have money on account with us. So they're either deferred or they're usually deferred, waiting for retirement. That's what that means. So they're not working now. They still have money on account and service, and they have a deferred retirement down the road.
So they're not vested.
No, they can be. Yes,
they're vested. They're just inactive.
Inactive. Inactive includes deferred, vested people, and non-deferred that where we can't find them.
Inactive just means that they're not working currently, right?
And they're not retired.
Okay.
Right.
And they're not retired, you're right.
So they left after 5 years plus, got their vesting, but they're not working now.
Right.
Well, some of them we can't locate, so their money is sitting here. Yep.
And it just sits until they claim it, I guess.
Yes, that's correct.
Hey, Andrew, did we ever change that interest rate?
No, it's still 5%.
So didn't we make a motion years ago to reduce that interest rate?
No, that has not been done.
But you recall we did address it, right? We just didn't do anything?
It has, well, it was talked about, but it did not move. I think that there was discussion around it, but there was no motion to change it. So it just remained the same.
Okay. And what committee would that go to?
Benefits Committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I think we'll get back with you, Brenda.
Okay.
Because I'm not getting a solid answer as far as that issue of how many folks are on there. It's kind of a sort of, and you did some test on it.
Right.
I guess what I need is I want to see it in writing, how many, everything like that. And I guess my main concern is I chatted with Mr. Clark, and one of the things that we were concerned about is that some of our people are in nursing homes, and Andrew shared with me that they don't report deaths in nursing homes. Or we're having trouble getting it. Is that right?
Lewis, that was the not that we're not there. Yes, the nursing homes do report to us. I think that was we're talking on the same page. They're not reporting. They were not reporting those deaths to the state to be included in the COVID numbers.
Okay.
I think that has changed now because it's sort of a moving target. I know Illinois does it. It depends on. I don't want to say politics, but it does of the state. Whether they're, because I know New York required it. I know Illinois required it. California required it, and Missouri was waffling on it. The federal government is still reviewing that requirement of nursing homes to have to report to the state at the state level. And until they rule on that, it's up to the state.
And that's my concern. I want to make sure we're not losing money, and that's because of no fault of anyone's, other than the fact
Right.
that the laws that are currently in place, don't allow for certain things that happen depending on the state. I mean, a lot of the people who had tickets for these concerts and stuff, they can't get their money back because in Missouri you don't have to make a refund, things like that. So I just wanted to make sure, but we'll get back with that and get the information. I want to see hardcore evidence of every single dime that we're losing because somebody is still out there dead, but we're still paying them, or still, whether it be nursing homes or whatever the case may be.
That would be our collection efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew, you did say that we have a service that we pay to do that.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. It's Berwyn. We actually send our entire database electronically to them as we're running payroll every month, and they run it through their database, which includes Social Security because they have a contract with Social Security. You used to be able to go directly to Social Security and run that. They do not allow that anymore because of all the confidentiality issues.
Oh, right.
So the service, it's very reasonable. It's all done electronically, and monthly we can. And the other thing too is if someone has been reported to us but they haven't been taken off payroll, we'll get duplicates that way where they've been reported to us by the family, but they haven't been taken off our payroll, and they're showing up on Berwyn as well. That really makes me feel good when that happens. That we're getting that. We have this dual thing going on.
Okay, well, I'll get back with everybody on that because I know Trustee Jones was very concerned, and so we're going to make sure we have it completely covered. Okay, thank you all.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's the end of our presentation then. So if there's anything else that you guys need from us, please let us know. And as always, we enjoy our engagement and we look forward to working again.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Really nice talking with you.
We're going to leave now. So have a good meeting and everybody stay safe, please.
Okay, Jean.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And what about Troy? Was he still going to speak?
Yeah, that's on the agenda down. You're almost there, Lewis.
Okay, so
that's my report. By the way, I have to say that because that was in my report.
Okay, so are we at the report from the actuary?
Report of the investment consultant, but there is none.
Consultant. Okay, then we'll go on to report of the actuary.
Yep.
All right. Hi guys. Thanks.
Oh, that's Troy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. Are you able to see your document? You have a document. So.
Oh yeah, I have everything.
No, I mean.
Sorry,
Troy, what I'm saying is I'm going to be sharing this with people, but you have no idea because you're not have a camera on. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I have the document printed out in front of me. So I'll go through the document and I'll tell you when to flip the page or where to be.
All right, hold on. Hold on. I'm trying to.
Or do you want me to share my screen?
Yes. Troy's not coming in. Christine, are you still there? Hey, Justin. How you doing, Justin?
El gallo joven mira a su alrededor, camina hasta donde está el gallo viejo. Bueno, viejo, llegó la hora de descansar. El gallo viejo le dice, vamos.
What's going on, Andrew?
I don't know where that's coming from.
In the book.
It's under tab 4.
And I'm trying to, you guys bear with me. I don't like the way Zoom does this sharing sometimes. Let's see if that's it. Yep, that's it.
Thanks,
Okay.
Christina.
All right, so thanks for having me here in this unique environment. Good to see all your faces. Sorry I don't have a camera to see my face. I'm thinking about getting a self-portrait up, but it's still in the works. I have valuation results to go over. As usual, I'll go through. If there's questions or anything, please ask me. Then we can discuss the other item that I brought up in the audit report when I'm done with this. And I try to explain a couple things as we go of kind of some questions and what I was talking about. So if you want to go to the first page, first couple pages are just data items. This is just showing you your data population as of January 1st, 2020, how it changed. You can see the retirees, beneficiaries went down slightly. Inactives went up. Next slide, I'll show how that breaks down between the vested and non-vested. Active members went up slightly as well. Overall, you can see the total population increased by 423 members. Primarily is the inactive population. Andrew, if you can go to the next slide. This is a kind of a more detailed analysis of these member populations. You can see active members changed slightly, very immaterial. But one of the points here is those inactive people you can see is the vested terminated and the non-vested terminated. So inactive people are members that are no longer in employment, not receiving a benefit and do something of a benefit. So the way that this is...
Excuse me for a minute. Does somebody have their TV on or radio? Because I'm getting some really bad feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback too.
That's better.
Yeah, I still hear it.
I can still hear it.
I think everybody should mute themselves unless they're talking.
All right.
Andrew, can you mute everyone except Troy?
Yeah, I can. It's going to take me. When I share, the thing is weird. It's not perfect when we're sharing. Okay.
Okay.
So give me a minute. I can't see everybody when we're sharing. That's the problem.
That's the terminated members. Okay.
So Troy, where are we again? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was.
Right there.
Okay.
Vested terminated members.
Yeah. So the question that was brought up was the inactive members. So what that entails is these members that have quit active work and not receiving a benefit. So you have, go back.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
So you have the vested terminated members are the members that terminate employment with 5 years of service. They're either entitled a refund of their contributions or they are entitled to a deferred monthly pension benefit. So you can see that slightly went up. We only show the account balance. Basically, that's how we value it in the valuation. We don't have all of the monthly deferred benefits, but you can see the benefit went up slightly. So then the other one is the non-vested terminated members, and those are the members that basically aren't entitled to anything other than a refund of those contributions. And as Andrew mentioned, I mean, these people are just, you know, you have people work for 5, 10, 15 years. They don't know that they have a refund of contributions, and then you lose them. So, I mean, this number jumped up a little bit, and, you know, average account balance that's due to them as a refund jumped a little bit, but that's basically what the non-vested terminated members are. And then we'll get to this a little more after the valuation presentation of what I brought up with the audit. If you want to go to the next slide, Andrew. So here's your valuation results summary. You can just basically see everything that's going on here. If you look at the assets, you can see that the market value and the actuarial value jumped up both. Market value jumped up quite a bit more than the actuarial value. The market value had an estimated return of roughly just over 16%, where the actuarial value was about 6.5%, a little less than the assumed 7.5%. And that entails just the asset smoothing method that's incorporated into the valuation. Then when you look at the liabilities, you can see that the unfunded actually went down slightly. Your assets jumped a little more than the liabilities, so your unfunded went down very, very slightly. And then your liabilities, you can see you would expect your liabilities to go up. You can see two different ones here. You have projected unit credit. That's pretty much what we base our funding ratio on. Last year, I put in the entry age normal liability. That is the liability that's associated with your funding method. You use a frozen initial method that's based on entry age normal, but it's a roll forward from many years ago. But that is the liability that's incorporated in the funding methodology. They're pretty similar, slightly different, just the way that things are incorporated. But if you go down below, you can see the funding ratio on an actuarial value, which is what we use for contributions and funding policy, basically stayed at 71.6. Slight decline by 0.1% on the EAN method. Most importantly is the employer cost, you can see went down. One on actuarially determined amount. What that is if I were doing the valuation and came up with a contribution to be contributed, it would have went down from 18.74 to 18.18. One of the things that the auditor brought up was the decrease in contributions because the statutory required rate is a declining rate. So last year it was 15.5. This year it's 15%. So in the grand scheme of things, we're contributing 3.18% less of expected payroll than what an actuarially sound contribution would be. You want to flip to the next slide, Andrew? So this breaks down the contribution for the year and a comparison, normal cost contribution and actuarial accrued liability contribution. The normal cost contribution is your benefit accrual and benefits accruing for the year. Your actuarial accrued liability contribution is paying down that unfunded liability. So you can see the comparison from 2019 to 2020. Overall, I mean, it barely moved, a slight increase by about $200,000. Well, when you compare that to payroll, everybody is getting the pay raises and whatnot. So you can see that the payroll increased by 9.2 million. So when you look at that on a percentage basis, you can see that pretty steep decline of 0.56% as compared to $192,000 increase in a contribution, and that's strictly based on payroll. Next slide, Andrew. So here is a further breakdown of that annual contribution between the board, the retirement system, and the charter schools. You can see that we have the annual, or the percentage amount is the same for each individual retirement or each individual location, and how it moved from the prior year. You went down to the 18.18%, but when you look at the actual amounts, on the bottom line, the statutory amount, the 15%, 29.1 million for the board. That's down from 29.9 last year. The retirement system is 75.9 thousand, up from 64.4 thousand, and then charter schools is 11.8 million versus 10.9 million last year. So that's just basically a way to allocate this covered payroll Board of Education went down, charter schools went up.
Where are we, Troy? I'm not seeing that. What page are we
Yeah,
on?
there's just, this is it. I'm just kind of discussing these results.
Okay.
Overall, your contribution amount went down as a percent of covered payroll. The amount actually barely moved. So, if you want to go to the next slide, the last couple slides are just your movement of liabilities and assets over the year. So this is showing your liability. It's a gain loss. So what this does, it shows actual liability as compared to expected. So your liability last year rolled forward to this year with everything being assumed that we have in the actual evaluation assumptions. You would expect the liability to come in at the 1.271. Actual liability on an entry age normal basis is 1.274. So you're looking at a $3.3 million loss on liability. So that means that the liabilities came in $3.3 million higher than we expected. And that's just from your movement of your population. Less people dying than expected, maybe higher pay raises and terminations than expected. But that is your liability experience for the year from the 1/1/19 valuation to the 1/1/2020 valuation.
Okay.
So if you flip to the next slide, this shows you the asset experience. So as I mentioned, the rate of return, if you look in the right column, that looks great. You know, a 16.1% return on market value of assets compared to a 7.5% return. That's great year. When you look at the left column, an actuarial value of assets. So what this does, it essentially smooths these asset losses over 5 years. And when you do that, you look at an actual return of 6.6%. So it's slightly lower than that 7.5% return. So it's a 0.9% loss on actuarial value of assets. So when you pair those together, you have roughly a loss of what was expected to what is actually being done right now. And that is your change in your unfunded liability from one year to the next.
Okay.
Troy, this is Christine. I've got a question for you. And we went through this scenario
Sure.
before, but if we're expecting a 7.5 and we know that 2020 returns, because of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Are not going to, even our investment consultant says that our 7.5 return going forward, given our asset allocation and looking at what we're going to do, doesn't get us to even 7.5. So at what point do we drop our expected rate of return down like we did before when we dropped it from 8 to 7?
That's a very, very good question.
Because
And I've had multiple analysis and multiple discussions on this year. The asset allocation and your expected return is basically looking at an expected rate of return on your asset allocation, but it's over a long-term rate of return. So you're not looking at what's going to happen over the next 5 or 10 years. You're looking at 30 plus years. So when you do that,
I don't think that when we even look at, I don't think we look at a 30-year, outlook, because none of us will probably be here by then. But, when we changed it from 8% to 7.5%, and even if we look at the next 5 to 10 years and our consultants don't believe that we can even get to 7.5%, given that we're a mature fund and that we pay $125 million a year in benefits, and that shall only grow as our active or our total count of active teachers may diminish, right? Our school district may go down, and therefore the money coming in is not equal or greater than to the money going out, for retirees.
Okay, so
You know when that
so
Can I interject something there, Troy? At the end of this year is the end of another 5-year period, and you're going to be doing a 5-year experience study next year. That's when it gets changed.
Okay. That's when the
yeah, but I
recommendation.
mean, but
Yes.
yeah, I mean, we can look at it then. I mean, we can certainly look at it at any time, but look at the market value that you had last year. You had a 16.1% return as compared to 7.5.
Yeah, but then when you look at the previous year, it was only 5%.
Well,
So,
exactly, but I mean, those are your fluctuations, and that's the point of using actuarial value. But when you look at a pension plan, you're all trustees. You're not expecting this plan to go under in 5 or 10 years. This is a long-standing plan that is going to go on for further and further into the future, hopefully longer than all of we are alive. That is why when you look at an expected rate of return on assets, you look at a 30-plus year time horizon, not the current market environment and only look at a 5 or 10 year return. You look at a 30-plus year, and 7.5% is affordable.
well,
So,
Troy, I kind of beg to differ that if you look at plans of our age and of our peer group, I don't believe that many plans still have a 7.5% return. So,
and that is that, you know what, that was exactly what I was getting to next. So you elected to lower your rate from 8% to 7.5% for that exact same reason, because of your peers and all of these other public plans that are lowering their discount rate, and the pressure on public sector plans to lower their discount rate. We did an analysis that supported an 8%. You still elected to go to a 7.5% because of that pressure to lower the discount rate. But if you can support that with your asset allocation, a 7.5% right here, there's no reason to lower it other than pressure to lower it. And when you look at those analysis, you see that all of these other plans are lowering their expected rate of return on assets, but you're not considering their asset allocation. When you consider your asset allocation and lowering the discount rate, that's what you have to look at, because all of those plans that lowered their discount rate and that maybe lower than 7%. I mean, let's just take CalPERS, the largest pension plan in the country. What are they at? 5%. Look at their asset allocation. They're 40% equities and 60% bonds. You guys are a lot more aggressive than that, and the expected return from investment consultants support the 7.5%.
Well, the investment consultant will tell you that they don't see in their own paperwork, they don't see a 7.5%. And my biggest thing is when we look at our asset allocation, in order to keep that 7.5%, that means we would have to tie up our money in private markets a lot longer. And it means that we would have to stay in riskier assets. And
well, I am more than happy to have our asset liability modeling team look at this, which we do in conjunction with the experience study. But the last experience study showed that we could have supported an 8% return.
Right.
On
and in a down market,
it's a down market now, but you can't think about current market conditions because this is a lifelong pension plan. You have to look at a long-term expected rate of return of 30+ years.
Correct. But again, the decisions that we make are based on what we see, what we're going to be working with. And in a down market, when you have commingled a very 70+% of our assets in commingled funds, then we have private markets. And in a down market,
but a 70% risky asset exposure and 30% bonds would easily support a 7.5% discount rate.
Well, I'm not talking about 70%. I'm talking about commingled funds and the ability for our fund to be able to access cash. And what we don't want is to have a high expected return in order, and really looking at it in any year, a given market where we have a huge large outflow of funds for our retirees, where we have to sacrifice, quality in our fund in order to liquidate, to get funds, to get money to pay our so we can talk about it here.
Yeah, I mean, that all goes into an expected long-term rate of return analysis, which we'll do at the experience study. But like I said, I believe a 7.5% return is still fully supportable with your asset allocation.
Okay, I'm going to share this with the consultant because, again, what they're saying and what you're saying are two different things.
Please,
they're close, but
please,
they are a little bit different.
Please share.
Far off, but your 7.5 is not what they're expecting.
What I'd like to do,
please.
Chris, we'll do that. Troy and Chris, we will get that together, and we and I'm talking about tomorrow or in the next day, and we'll make sure that we have that meeting so we can get this settled. Is that okay?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I just add in one thing? I would love it. A lot of funds only give me this information at experience studies or when I do the EROA analysis. If you guys can give me an annual analysis from the investment consultants of what their long-term rate of return assumption is or what they're expected to be, that would be great.
We have that. It was done earlier in 2019. So.
Yeah, I typically don't get those. So if you could send me that, that would be great.
And they're not done every year. They're done, Troy, just so you know, that was 2019. The one before that was 2017. And so,
so biannually.
Coupled with your experience study, because they give you a report at that time about all the experience. So it's not like you don't get a report. It's during the valuation.
No, but I only get it at the experience study when we look at that. So if I could get it anytime that report comes through, but we can look at what that return is, and then if that could be a discussion with the board if we want to look at a possible analysis.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, can he get that?
That would be perfect.
Andrew, can you get that to him pretty quick?
Well, I have to talk to Kristen and find out what the backup was on that report. What Troy's talking about and what they presented to us last year, they're two different things.
Right.
Okay, there's more data that Kristen has to back up that report. So if Troy's needing the backup, I need to know that. So Kristen can, whenever they do that allocation, which was done in February of 2019, at the same time, they need to coordinate that so that is automatically sent to that actuary.
All right.
So
and then Louis, I mean, just to expand on that, I mean, it'd be great to get this from the funds every time they're done, just to look at. But then when I look at that and compare that to what we're using, say the 7.5% here, that could be a discussion with the board to look at a separate EROA analysis from our investment team to see what we expect it to be. But I mean, that's a separate discussion, and I would really entertain the idea of seeing what the investment consultants had in 2019 for a 30+ year expected return on assets.
All right. Well, Christina, we'll get with Andrew, Troy, and of course Matt, and make sure that happens, and he gets that information when every time it happens, every time it's published.
Yep.
Thanks.
I don't know what that is in the background.
Chris, those were actually great questions, because I've had a discussion with almost every single board this year with the way the market's been going.
Okay.
So that's pretty much for the valuation. No, that's pretty much for the valuation results.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the valuation?
I don't think so. Anything else, anybody?
So hold on, okay? Even though even though the contributions are now set statutorily, you still have to accept the valuation report. It's at number 1.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2020 actual evaluation report as presented by the actuary.
Is there a second?
Richardson, second.
Okay, the motion has been made and properly moved in second. Do we do a roll call on Andrew, or just
Sure.
a roll call on that? Okay.
Angie Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin. Sheila, are you there?
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes. Oh, shoot. Yes.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
and Justin Stein.
Yes.
Okay.
You have 9.
Okay. So the motion passes. Okay.
All right, so moving on to what I brought up in the audit discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So the Buck has what's called a SWAT team that looks at data, digs through data, but they have address searches and desk searches with multiple vendors to look at these things. I've already done a few of them. I believe that I could have this SWAT team do a death audit for your fund to basically look at all of the inactives for a very, very, very minimal cost. I just did one for another fund with 3,700 inactive members. It was about $1,100.
Okay.
Yours possibly could be a little more. I mean, not much more. I mean, but you have, if you look at, I mean, the slide on the census, you have about 7,700 inactives. That would possibly go up slightly to look at some other members that I'll get into. But it would look at all of the retiree members as of whatever date that we have the data for to see those deceased members. The main thing would be when you're doing your analysis through Berwyn, we have a lot more things to look at for that. But I don't think you have ever looked at any of these inactive members, say your deferred vested and your non-vested members that have an account balance sitting out there. I'm looking at the data right now. Your oldest deferred vested member is 85 years old. That's due a deferred vested benefit. Your oldest inactive member, non-vested member, is 100 years old.
Yeah,
So there's more than likely.
We know about her.
But I mean, yeah, but I mean, we could do a low cost thing to go through all of this analysis to look at all of these inactive members. But then on the flip side, when we do this analysis, there's not much more cost to look at your retiree members that elect a contingent survivor annuity. When we value these annuities or value member benefits, they go off of the option that they look at. So if you elect the option of a 50% or 100% contingent annuity, there's probably no data out there to look at whether or not that contingent survivor is deceased or still living. So we could also do that. I'm looking at the data right now, Andrew, and I don't have enough of the info on the data, so I don't know how hard that would be, but if we could also add that in to look at that, but that could possibly eliminate some liability if you have contingent survivors that are expected to get some continuation of a member benefit that are deceased. We can value them as a life only, but then possibly get rid of some of these other members that are due a refund or a deferred benefit and get rid of that liability as well.
Well, let me bring this up. Troy, can I ask a question, please?
Who is that?
So
Hold on.
you're saying it's Andrew.
Andrew,
sorry.
is that you?
Yes.
I had a question, but you go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, so what would be the most cost? Because the board would just say, yes, let's do it, because we have plenty of budget money for the actuary. I mean, there's a variance in there. You don't need if it's less than $2,000, the board does not need to approve that.
I like I said, I just did this for 3,700 people and it was $1,100.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're looking at 7,700 people plus possible contingent, which Andrew and I can discuss to see if we have the info for that and how hard it is to get. But seriously, I don't think it's more than $2,000 or $3,000.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I would want, can I get a motion to make that happen?
Yes, can I make a motion to approve the actuary to do this contingent liability research and clarification on active, inactive, and contingent beneficiaries?
Is there a
Well,
second?
Chris, I won't do active, just inactive and members in receipt.
Okay, let's do it again, Chris.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve up to $3,000 for the actuary to look at inactive and contingents on our fund to be able to provide us with details and clarification moving forward.
I don't know.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second. This is Angie.
Okay, it's the motion's been made and properly moved in second. We're gonna do a roll call, Andrew,
You know, well, yeah, you can do that.
because it's over the $2,000.
No,
Okay,
it's just it's money.
Andrew,
There's no
I
problem.
thought we didn't need to make a motion on that.
Right.
If it's
Andrew?
under 2,000, if it's under
Hold on,
2,000, I'd
hold
like
on.
to
No,
do
there's
it
no-
down.
Hold on.
Hold
No,
on a
that's
minute.
not how it goes. You guys,
Oh.
I tried to explain it before. We have enough budget for the
That's
actuary.
right.
All you really need to do is just authorize the report. It's not going to go over. This is not going to push over the actuary's budget for the year.
So we don't
Right.
have to do a motion and
Well,
or
you
a roll
can.
call.
No, you don't. No, a motion isn't necessary.
Andrew, so then we just,
Well,
so we just do all in favor?
you can't. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I know this. It's hard because we don't have a personal interaction here very well.
Exactly.
But
All
what
right,
I'm
so
trying to
Sheila,
say is, I think that what I was trying to say was, yes, you need to approve the report, but you don't need to approve dollars.
Right.
okay then, so then can I have a motion to approve the report?
Yes.
The
I make a
actuary-
motion that we approve the report of the actuary.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the motion carries, and so we then move on. And so, where are we now, Andrew?
You're on the agenda, you mean?
No, I mean,
I mean,
so then
that
allows
concludes my report.
Okay, that allows you, Troy, to move forward with that investigation.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to drop. Andrew, can we touch base tomorrow about
Yes.
things that I may need for that?
Yeah, just call me.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Okay, Troy.
All right.
Excellent
Bye.
report as always.
Bye.
All right.
Okay. So, a report of committees. Benefits, Donna Jones.
No report.
Okay. Trustee business, Darnetta Cleanscale.
Yeah, I'm taking myself off of mute. Okay, the only report that I have is that we are pulling together a session that we will have an educational session in August at the investment committee meeting, which is August 20th,
Okay.
for about 45 minutes. And an agent from Vista name, Julian, I'm not sure what the last name is, but we'll be able to provide that for us.
Julian Bolstick.
Bolston, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Lillian
I have a
Bolton.
question.
Yes,
Who's on this committee?
you are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you
I'm
are.
not aware of all this. That's why I asked who's on the committee.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to call you. I'm not sure when, but I should have followed up. So
Yeah,
I will
you should
share.
have, because I don't know what you're talking about the training in August.
Okay.
And I've
So then,
asked that when you do training as active teachers, be careful with our schedules. It's supposed to take place?
it's at the investment committee meeting in August.
The investment committee meeting on that Thursday?
Right. Yeah. On the
Okay.
20th.
On the
August 20th.
20th.
Yes. And I will call you, Sheila, and share with you, you know, the information. Kristen helped us to, you know, to talk about that. But I will call you so I can share with you the background.
Okay.
Okay, now, like I said, we're supposed to be back at work at that time. So did you take into consideration if the teachers, active teachers or active people be able, would that be a good time for them?
Well, it's a 45-minute session, and it's during the investment committee meeting. So, you know, and so it wasn't an unusual time. It was a time of the normal investment committee for August.
Okay, so we're gonna be having 2 meetings on that day?
No, just the
just
one.
the regular investment meeting.
Right. And so during that investment meeting will be the in-service for us.
Not a happy camper, but let's move forward.
That what?
I said, I'm not a happy camper, but let's move forward.
Well,
Okay.
what would you prefer as far as a meeting for?
Firstly, I don't even know what we're talking about. And when I say what we're talking about, the purpose of the meeting and the contents, etc., and which I will not discuss now because this is not the time for this discussion.
Okay. Then we'll
Okay.
we'll get with you, Sheila, and see if we can provide the answers and concerns, and then we can make the
I will
adjustments.
do that. I will call tomorrow.
Okay,
What's a
that'd
good
be great.
time? What's a good time to call you?
Tomorrow is not a good day.
Then the next day,
So
Wednesday.
Wednesday about anytime after 9 on Wednesday, I think.
Okay.
Okay then.
I got it.
Okay. Anything else, Darnetta?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Investment, Christina Bennett.
All of you, so in your books, you have a couple of the updates that we've done. So since our February meeting, we have transferred or approved our assets to be moved from progress to exponents. That is in the process of being transferred. There was an update given at the investment meeting this week that discussed that. And then our assets from Chicago Equity have been transferred or in the process of transferring to Edgar Lomax.
Yes.
And then we had a review for those of you that were in the meeting. The minutes or the information should be on the website, or Andrew should have you should have received them via email. We do not have another meeting until August. And at that meeting, as Darnetta had suggested, we will be taking part of that investment meeting, which is regularly scheduled. It's the same time, same schedule that we've had for forever. So we're not taking up an extra time from anyone. And we'll be talking about private equity 101 at that meeting, in addition to our review of our portfolio. So we have, right now, we're just taking a break. No one's going to NASP this summer for our conferences that we usually have around this time. And we will hear from updates from Kristen in August.
Okay. Anything else,
No,
Christina?
no.
Okay. Legislative Rules and Regulations, Justin Stein.
I don't have any report. I know we
Okay.
talked about trying to maybe a meeting, but I'm not sure what people are concerned about or what needs to be addressed. I don't have any issues.
Okay, then I'll get with you. I'll give you a call, Justin, so that we can talk a little bit about some things that we need to move forward on. So I'll
I
get
know
with
you talked about having co-chairs for committees.
Yes,
That has to be put into the rules somehow, or?
exactly. So we'll get with Andrew so we can
It's
make
just-
that happen.
That what happened, if you guys, we have to remember that we got interrupted.
Right.
At the February meeting, in the minutes, I believe at the very end, almost at the very end of the minutes, it actually said something about that those meetings were going to be planned. Well, you know what happened.
Right.
We ended up only having the Personnel and Professional Contracts Committee meeting, and that was the last meeting in the boardroom. And then the Legislative Committee meeting just didn't happen because we got disrupted, and we had now we have a way of taking care of our meetings.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I'll get with you, Justin. We'll get with
Okay.
Andrew, and we'll make that happen. Personnel and Professional Contracts, Yvette Levy, is Dr. Levy available?
She is not here, but
Okay,
this is a good. I was hoping she would be.
I was too.
Because what I wanted to do was just say that the consultant who's working on the search is ready to move forward. And so I'll talk to Yvette, but he really would, for me to meet even a September 30th date, we need to start this up again in July, very beginning. So and he's ready to come and give you a status report on, via a video conference, as well as arrange to probably interview 3 people. So
Okay.
With that being said, guys, this is what I need from you. Where is it? Here. Matt and I talked about this. There's no reason to have a public meeting if we can get a motion to close the next Personnel and Professional Contracts Committee pursuant, it's number 2. Is that okay,
Okay.
Matt? Matt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Remember we talked about,
Right.
so for what I would ask for is that the trustees vote now to close the next Personnel and Professional Contracts Committee. In the notice, that would be reflected. Does that make any sense?
I'm waiting on Matt to tell us
What-
whether we can do it or not.
Right. In order to have a closed portion of a meeting, it has to be voted on to be closed during an open meeting. So
Right.
either you have an open meeting and then at that meeting you vote to close that meeting at that time, or an earlier open meeting, you then vote to close a subsequent meeting.
So it never has to be open on Zoom because you've already voted to keep the meeting closed to discuss confidential personnel matters.
So
Does that make
Andrew, it
sense?
won't be a Zoom meeting. It'll just be a closed Zoom meeting for trustees.
Correct. Yes, it'll be just like, when you close the meeting and ask everybody not to leave, and it's just the trustees and whoever, right?
All right, so then we can make a motion to do this now.
Yes.
Okay, can someone make that motion?
I make a motion to close the next personnel and professional contracts meeting pursuant to Missouri Statute 610.021 and number 3 and number 13 for the purpose of having a confidential or privileged communication with the executive director of the retirement system on personnel matters.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who was
Okay.
that, Sheila?
Yes, that was Sheila
Second.
Goodwin. Sheila Goodwin seconded that motion. So it's been probably moved and seconded. All in favor?
Louis, you need a roll call.
Yeah, roll
Oh,
call.
we need roll call on this? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. I'm sorry.
Angie Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
and Justin Stein.
Yes.
How many we have,
Nine.
Andrew?
You have 9.
Okay, so the motion carries. So the,
Thank you.
all right. Let's see. Okay, new business. Any new business?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so then we'll go on to Matt and the attorney report.
Nothing pressing. However, there are a couple discussions we can have. One of which I can just update the board on the legal challenge against Senate Bill 62. However, if we want to have other discussions, I can, Mr. Cross, talk about some of the overpayment issues or concerns that you had. If you want me to talk about that, I'm more than willing to talk
Yes.
about that. But I think if we're going to have that discussion, why don't we have that discussion in a closed portion? So why don't we close it now if you want to talk about it?
Can I get a motion to
my report?
Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Okay.
Yeah, and probably the easiest way, I can read off what the motion would be, and you can just kind of, basically the motion is to close the meeting and that all records and votes to the extent permitted by law pertaining to and or resulting from this closed meeting be closed under Missouri Revised Statute Section 610.021 subsection 1 for the purpose of having a confidential privileged communication with legal counsel.
Okay, is there a second?
Who made the motion?
So someone, I said it, but someone will need to make a motion.
Somebody can make that motion.
Darnetta.
I'll make a motion if you want.
To close the net. Okay, go ahead.
Second.
I'll make a motion that
Maybe
we
a second.
close. What's that?
Go ahead,
It would be
Justin.
in a second. Darnetta moved it, so it's a second now.
Okay,
I'll
that's
second
a second. Okay, second. All in favor?
Nope.
It's a roll call, Mr. Cross.
Roll call. Yes, roll call.
Okay. Angie Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
and Justin Stein.
Yes.
And you have 9. The live stream's gonna stop now, everybody, so hold on.